Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this show today. And of course, it is wonderful to have your company as usual. So the 9th day of April, and what's the weather looking like? Well, it looks like a light drizzle. It's not a raining. We couldn't call it big rain. It's light drizzle. And of course, what's happening is the temperature 24 degrees is still about the same as what it was yesterday. So, but it's still a little bit different because of the slight drizzle that's out there. Well, today we have for you all the news update, and of course we'll have the little bit of a glimpse of Bhartiya Navwarsh, which took place yesterday at King George Square, organized by Divya Jyoti Jagriti Sansthan. Well, let's get into the news, and of course, first of all, let's take a look at news in brief.
Hello, Brianna Shepherd with the headlines on ABC News. The Prime Minister expected to use the weekend to call an election, with Scott Morrison avoiding a last-minute complication after Australia's highest court decided it won't intervene in a bitter dispute over New South Wales Liberal Party pre-selections. At least 30 killed and more than 100 injured in a missile strike at a train station in Ukraine, where local officials say thousands of civilians were trying to evacuate. Another life lost to flooding. Sydney takes stock after being smashed by heavy rain yet again. Tasmania officially has a new Premier, with Jeremy Rockliff elected unopposed by the Parliamentary Liberal Party, replacing Peter Gutwein, who resigned on Monday after 2 years in the top job. Police investigating after United Australia Party leader Craig Kelly was egged during a rally at a park in Melbourne's inner southeast. The former Chief Executive Officer of WA's Joondalup Health Campus appears in court, accused of possessing videos of young girls being sexually abused. And surfing great Kelly Slater scheduled to compete in the Bells Beach Pro after speculation over his vaccination status. Those are the headlines from ABC News for now. From the team here, it's good night.
So there's the updates, the news updates, news in brief. Well, right now, let's look at some of those news in detail. Well, the High Court has thrown out the New South Wales Liberal Party's pre-selection debate, and they say they won't have anything to do with it.
Star power on the campaign trail. Australian culinary icon Maggie Beer alongside the Labor leader.
Nutrition is so important, but so is pleasure.
The acclaimed Cook's Foundation has been promised $5 million to help improve food in aged care.
Oh, that's me.
Anthony Albanese's South Australian pit stop as the nation waits for the Prime Minister to call the election.
I feel like putting in a phone call to the Prime Minister if he doesn't know where the Governor-General lives and offer him a lift to the lodge.
The Governor-General actually lives here at Government House.
The last election was on the 18th of May, and the next election will be held at about the same time. Well, you'll know very soon.
How soon?
Very soon.
How soon? Sunday?
You'll know when I'm announcing it.
Scott Morrison was in Victoria in 2 Labor-held seats, the marginal seat of Corangamite outside Geelong and McEwen north of Melbourne.
Beautiful kitchen.
Old-style campaigning mixed with new lines of attack.
I know that not every government is perfect, particularly in times like this. But what I also know is I know who I am, and I know what I'm about.
His argument, you might not like me, but at least you know me.
They don't know anything about Labor because Labor haven't told them.
Enough. Call the election, let the Australian people decide.
Whoever wins in May will have to contend with rising interest rates, the big banks forecasting at least 4 rate rises by year's end, adding hundreds of dollars to monthly mortgage repayments.
What it does is emphasise the need for a plan to take pressure off the cost of living, not for the period of the election campaign, which is what this government's got, but permanently.
How you manage a strong economy, that is the best way to keep mortgage rates as low as we possibly can.
The long wait for the PM to name the election date will soon be over. The High Court this afternoon threw out a bid to challenge a dozen Liberal pre-selections in New South Wales, preserving Scott Morrison's captain's picks. So expect an announcement Sunday, ending what's been a long faux campaign to kick off the real thing. Andrew Provan.
So tomorrow is the day, D-Day tomorrow. We'll know when the election will be. Well, right now we'll join with our Premier as she addressed everyone this morning, and let's take a look at that. Yes, we are ready to go. So the Premier making this announcement.
You're ready? Ready and waiting. Excellent. Okay. Well, had to have the tour of the hospital before I started. Okay. Hello, Queensland, and hello, Kingaroy. Well, it's wonderful to be here today for the opening of the brand new hospital. This is over $90 million investment. And as I said, my commitment to is all of Queensland. It doesn't matter where you live in our great state. You have the right to good quality health services. And I'm very pleased today to be joined with the Health Minister, Yvette D'Arth, the Chief Health Officer, the Chair of the Board, Mike Horan, and the local Mayor, Brett Otto, who's also going to say a few words. But this investment had 275 full-time jobs over the life of the project. What we've seen through here is there's a brand new CT scanner which saves people a 4-hour trip to Toowoomba. We've got brand new birthing suites. We have great bed facilities. We're able to meet with the doctors and the nurses that work here. And it's a great place to come and work, live in the community and raise your family. So it's going to service the population, and it builds on our commitments of having opened the Roma Hospital. I know Yvette D'Arth's been opening the new Blackall Hospital. But look, I'll hand over to Yvette to say a few words about this hospital, and then Mike Horan, and then we'll move on to another key announcement.
Thank you, Premier. So $92.5 million investment in this brand new hospital here in Kingaroy. And for the first time, Kingaroy has a CT. And I've already heard that just last weekend with the motocross event locally that there was some very serious injuries, and if it wasn't for this CT, there would have been a very long trip out to Toowoomba to have these people seen. So it's fantastic to see these facilities being used immediately. Of course, it also means we've got modern birth suites here, expanded emergency department, we have a new cardiac rehabilitation service, expanded renal, dialysis and infusions department, a new cancer treatment service featuring telechemo unit, expanded specialist outpatient services. So it's wonderful to see all of these new facilities out in Kingaroy, and what shows is the Palaszczuk government is investing in our regional hospitals and making sure that no matter where you live in Queensland, you get state-of-the-art facilities, and we're hoping such modern state-of-the-art facilities will help us to attract and retain health workers as well, which we know is a challenge right across the country right now. I want to thank everyone involved in the planning, including our First Nations people, making sure that this is a culturally appropriate hospital in the way that we have designed it and the services that we are delivering. And of course to our health workers who have just been doing such an amazing job over the last 2 years, particularly with COVID. In the Darling Downs area alone, we have around 238 staff who are currently isolating or quarantine, and that means more staff than what we have in this hospital. So that's an extraordinary number, but I'm pleased that those numbers are starting to come down. So thank you to the health workers for the great work that they do each and every day as well. And to Mike Horan and the board here, the Darling Downs HHS, for helping design and deliver this wonderful hospital while making sure that they continue to deliver state-of-the-art healthcare during that time. We're just thrilled to be here today opening it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Premier. Look, I'd just like to reiterate our grateful thanks to the Premier and her government for the funds to construct this beautiful facility. It's so important for regional towns throughout the rural areas of Queensland to have a facility like this. It is truly the foundation stone of a community, and we do thank the Premier and the Health Minister for supporting us to make this or to construct this beautiful hospital. I'd also like to particularly thank the staff. The staff had to endure about 2.5 years of construction occurring around them, and during that time they maintained the 24-hour-a-day, 365-day service to this community. And finally, to Mayor Otto and his council, and to Mayor Elvie and her council from Cherbourg, we're so grateful for the local government support, and we hope that this magnificent hospital will serve the 32,500 people that live in the South Burnett for 100 years or more. And I'd like to now, the Premier, pass over to Mayor Otto.
Yes,
thank
please,
you.
Mayor. Lovely to be here in your community.
Thank you, Premier. It's wonderful to have Premier and the Minister and, of course, Head of Darling Downs Health, Mike Horan, with us today. Can I say an unreserved thank you to the Palaszczuk government. We're extremely grateful for this new facility, and of course it's a continuation of what we've seen over recent years in relation to funding for COVID, funding for roads. From what I've observed, our region has received a greater contribution than what I can recall in my lifetime living here in the region from the Palaszczuk government. We have a number of projects happening across the region, and as I know, my fellow mayors across regional Queensland all feel the same, that we are seeing a wonderful investment in regional Queensland from the Palaszczuk government. This is another example of that. And Premier, we really just can't thank you enough. It's absolutely tremendous. On behalf of all of the people of the South Burnett region, we're extremely grateful to the Darling Downs Health Service, to the Palaszczuk government, to the Health Department. This is going to set us up for increased services. It's going to provide us with a greater level of technical expertise, greater resources, more places, more access for our community right across the South Burnett region, and it's a tremendous initiative. We're extremely grateful to be here today as part of this opening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mayor. Okay, well now we have another significant announcement. So Queenslanders have done exceptionally well, as we all know, in our fight against COVID. We were one of the first jurisdictions in the world to offer our people the chance to be vaccinated before our first wave arrived. And I have no doubt that this saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. And I really want to thank everyone who has gone out and got vaccinated. In order to keep people safe and allow lives to return to normal, we required people going to places like pubs and cafes and sporting stadiums to be vaccinated. Today I can announce we are easing some of those restrictions, and the Chief Health Officer will go into some more detail. So from 1 a.m. Thursday, April 14, most venues that have been open only to vaccinated staff and patrons will be open to all. It's time to reunite Queensland. Pubs, clubs, cafes and restaurants, theme parks, casinos and cinemas, weddings, showgrounds, galleries, libraries, museums and stadiums. The requirement for vaccinations will still apply, of course, in vulnerable settings. We don't want people in hospitals to get sick, in aged and disability care, in prisons, in schools and early childhood centres. The trigger point is our level of vaccinations. As of yesterday, 90.5% of Queenslanders 12 years and old and over have received at least 2 doses of the vaccine. This is incredible. The restrictions we had in place did their job, keeping our community safe and encouraging vaccinations. The Chief Health Officer is comfortable, given where we are in the current wave, that these restrictions can ease from next Thursday. But we still need parents of younger children to consider getting children vaccinated. 50 pop-up sites are open for vaccinations at schools across the state, in addition to existing sites. And masks, of course, are still encouraged where people still feel they are in vulnerable settings. But let me say this too. If you are unvaccinated, please consider going and getting vaccinated. We know the evidence is clear. You are more likely to end up in hospital and risk severe illness. It is absolutely important too that people still go and get their boosters. The Queenslanders have done a great job, and I thank you for everything that you have done. But the time has come to ease some of these restrictions as we return to a new normal and as we go about reuniting Queenslanders. I know it has taken a heavy toll on families, on businesses. I thank them for the work that they have done, and I still urge people who are unvaccinated, if you have any concerns, please go and talk to a health professional, as you are more likely to end up in hospital if you are unvaccinated. I'll hand over to the Chief Health Officer. Thanks, Dr. Gerard.
Thank you very much, Premier. We now have clear evidence from multiple sources that we have passed the peak of transmission of the secondary Omicron wave in Queensland. We're basing that on data, on PCR data, on the RAT data that we receive, the rates of positivity that we receive, the rates of furloughing in staff that we are aware of, the data on furloughing in hospital staff, for example, on calls to ambulances and on calls to our helpline. So we have solid evidence now that we have passed the peak of transmission of the secondary COVID wave, which we know is due to the BA2 variant, with 75% of our most recently sequenced viruses being of the BA2 variant. Now, this is the community transmission, so it's a peak of community transmission. Hospital admissions we know will lag a bit, but I would expect to see hospital admissions, people in hospital, to start to fall sometime in the next 7 days. That's what we're projecting. Sometime between now and Easter we will see falls in the number of people in hospital. In effect, this because of vaccination, it is clearly because of vaccination, the impact of this virus on the Queensland community has been relatively mild. We have had a significant increase in the number of hospital admissions associated with this wave, probably about a third or a half of what we saw during the initial Omicron wave in January, but very few admissions to the intensive care unit. So at present we only have 4 patients right across Queensland ventilated in the intensive care units due to COVID-19.
So we leave that report there, so that's the coverage. So what is all this mean, and will this pandemic have an effect on the elections?
With the election set to be called any day now, the Australian Electoral Commission has been getting ready for millions of Australians to cast their votes. Voters are being urged to check their enrolment to make sure nobody misses out on having their say. Tom Rogers is the Australian Electoral Commissioner and he joins us now from Canberra. Tom Rogers, welcome. It's great to have a chat to you. So are you ready for this? It's all about to unfold.
We are fired up and ready to go.
So COVID is a big factor, obviously. What special provisions have been made for that this year?
Well, you can imagine that it's a big issue for us at the moment to prepare, and it's going to be a very complex election, but we are putting in place a whole range of measures to deal with that. And, without going into all the boring statistics, I think we're using something like 63,000 litres of hand sanitizer, 34,000 litres of surface cleaner. We've got extra staff, measures and a whole range of things to deal with that particular issue.
Are there any special challenges in aged care facilities because of that? Do you usually go into aged care facilities to facilitate voting?
Yeah, we absolutely do. And this time around it will be different. We're working with state and federal health authorities and indeed the aged care homes themselves to work out how best to service the residents of those homes. We've got a dedicated team of people that are contacting those homes to make sure that we can provide that service. In some cases, there'll still be visits. In other cases, we'll be relying on postal voting. And again, that's based on health advice. The last thing we want to do is to turn the election into some sort of super spreader event. We're moving very cautiously and carefully with that.
And we've been seeing some shots there just now of people voting in those cardboard polling booths, and they seem kind of close together. Have you had to make special provision because of COVID to put them any further apart or not?
Yes, we've got all sorts of measures in the polling place, and you'll see that we'll be reminding people about social distancing and about whatever the restrictions are under health orders in place in those states at that time. We're taking it very, very cautiously. As I mentioned before, we've got extra staff who'll be helping us deal totally with the issue of sanitisation in the polling place, making sure we wipe down surfaces. We're using, I think normally we use about 100,000 pencils. In this election, we're going to have 4.5 million pencils to deal with the need to keep them clean and to make sure that people are safe. And we think it'll be a very safe place to vote in the polling place.
Now, what rate is Indigenous enrolment at, and have you been working on that, and is it improving?
Yeah, look, Indigenous enrolment, and all of this is an estimate, by the way, just let me start with that, because we don't ask people to declare their indigeneity on the enrolment form. But we are very conscious that the Indigenous rate of enrolment, the estimated rate, is not the same as the general rate of enrolment. And for the last few years, we've really been focusing on this issue. Right now, we've got about 70 partnership models in place all over Australia with a range of Indigenous community groups. They're helping us grow the role. And very pleasingly, since about 2017, the growth of the Indigenous role has outstripped the rate of the general role, and it's also outstripped the rate of growth in the eligible population in the Indigenous community as well. So we're seeing a lot of positive movements, but we're not resting, and we're focused on this issue particularly.
So there you are, ready to roll. We just have to wait for that announcement from the Prime Minister. That announcement might be coming tomorrow. Well, what has been announced, of course, we know that Tasmania has got a new Premier.
And I believe I speak for all Tasmanians to thank Peter for all he has done. There is absolutely no doubt, in my view, and of all Tasmanians, he was a very committed leader, an inspiring leader, and I wish him all the very best. It is my plan to lead a government with integrity, a government that is courageous, accountable, delivers on its commitments, but above all, I will lead a government with heart, a government that listens to Tasmanians' needs and ensures Tasmanians' priorities continue to be our priorities.
So Tasmania's priorities on the top, and well done and well said, and congratulations on that new appointment. Well, right now, of course, we'll take a look at New South Wales and the 13th flood they've had this year.
A community in mourning as the floods claim another life. Police divers retrieved the body of a 68-year-old man from a van submerged in floodwaters. His family had reported him missing this morning. A short time later, his van was spotted washed off the road. It's another blow to an area already hit by floodwaters 3 times this year.
Where you see the shed now, that used to be all the way in that corner.
Alex Ginn tried to save what he could and ended up swimming to survive.
This branch here saved my life.
So you were clinging onto that?
I was clinging onto that.
The father of 5 children under 10 says the floods came without warning.
We had to evacuate the children, got them to higher ground. So that was our first priority. And when we came back here, we couldn't save anything.
Washers and dryers donated after the last floods are ruined.
With me, I can sort of cope. Valuables that we can replace over time. But like my wife, she's under a lot of stress.
Stress that's being felt right across flood-affected parts of Sydney.
It will stop raining. It will get better. We just need to keep grafting through this one day at a time.
Residents are demanding to know why there wasn't more warning. The government says there are lessons to be learnt.
It wasn't that long ago that these events you would expect to occur every 100 or so years. We're now seeing them happen more often, and it would be remiss of any government to not be making greater investments. See, the budget's coming up.
People planning on travelling during the school holidays are being urged to stay vigilant as the flood risk remains. Although the rain is easing, those living or moving along the Hawkesbury and Nepean rivers are being warned to stay alert.
Have a great school holidays, but please be mindful once again of the conditions that you're around.
A threat that is not over yet. Rani Hayman, ABC News, Sydney.
Well done, Rani. Rani Hayman's reporting there. Well, right now we'll go to Ukraine before we go on to that glimpses of the Jyoti Jagriti Sansthan.
Before the destruction, before the massacres, Russian armour rolled into Bucha. No one knew the horror they would bring. It's a glimpse of what the town on the outskirts of Kiev looked like before the killing started. More than a week after the withdrawal of Russian forces, bodies are still being recovered.
Today, we've collected 17 bodies.
In towns around the capital, the human toll is still being counted.
In Kiev region, we found 650 dead bodies. From them, it is 40 dead bodies, only kids.
War crimes, crimes against humanity, and claims it's something even worse.
I would say in Bhartiya they may even go further. It's unclear at the moment, but there are indications there of genocide.
The small village of Andrivka is yet another place to have the misfortune of being on Russia's road to Kiev. Lubov Kamenko says many here still don't know if their loved ones are dead or alive.
I heard there were 47 people. Some of them are missing and can't be found so far. Some of them have been murdered. All of them are young people.
It's hard to comprehend the scale of devastation here. And when you talk to villagers, you get the sense that the rest of the world knows more about this war than they do. Many have had no communication, they don't know where their family and friends are, and many don't know where the Russian advance has moved to. And as Russia pivots to the east, NATO members meeting in Brussels are working to get Ukraine more weapons.
We have a strong sense of urgency. That was something that I think was felt among all allies and partners here today.
Either you help us now, and I'm speaking about days, not weeks, or your help will come too late.
Officials say Russian forces are quickly amassing its army here in the Donbass. Ukrainian troops are digging in for a long battle. NATO Secretary-General has told the ABC a protracted war is a possibility.
We need to realise that there is a risk that this will last for months or even years, because we see the will of the Ukrainian people to stand up against a brutal invasion. But we also see no indications that President Putin has changed his goal of taking control over Ukraine.
Towns in Ukraine's east are clearing out as they come under Russian attack. But among those unwilling or unable to get out, there remains some pro-Russian sentiment.
I'm sorry, but it is my understanding that this land was sold. They are destroying our Donbass to give the land away to the Americans. The Americans bought it to place their nuclear weapons here.
There are warnings that an escalation of war in the Donbass isn't far off.
If they try to take this position, I'll kill them. If I don't kill them, they'll kill me. Those are the rules of war.
But morale is high, even with the knowledge of what they know is coming. Isabella Higgins, ABC News, Kiev.
The rules of the war, oh my God, yeah. And now when you look at those kind of scenes and all the things, so isn't it wonderful that we live in the place like where we are at the moment. Well, right now, let's join the Premier once again.
Individuals and families. We've got a big job to do. We've got a recovery underway, our economic recovery. We've also got an Olympics to plan for. There is a lot to do in this state. You've seen a brand new opening of a hospital here today. I want people to be safe. We're going to continue to protect those most vulnerable members of our community, and that is why those mandates will stay for some of those sectors. So I want to thank Queensland for the great job. We'll release a map later on today in terms of how those high vaccination rates have been across Queensland, and like I said, now's the time for families to be reunited. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Time for families to be reunited, and we hope that everything's under control. So as he mentioned, that if any doubt, go get yourselves checked as well. Well, as promised, right now I'll take you to King George Square, where last night we had the Bhartiya Navwarsh, a beautiful celebration, and always good to see the kids. And in this one, they're doing a Krishna item. Krishna is the hero.
Krishna
Krishna, Mera Superhero, wonderful performance there by the kids of ISKCON. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you today. As we know, the Holi for today has been cancelled, due to those weather predictions. Not too bad at the moment, but I think it's a responsible decision by the organizers going by the forecast. And of course, with the forecast, we never know what happens as time goes on, and for everyone going to all the Ram Navami functions at this point in time, wishing you all the very best as well. And of course, we know it's Ramadan that's happening as well, Chaitra Navaratri, and of course tomorrow the big day, tomorrow midday. At most of the temples, Ram Navami will take place as well. So Ram Janam Utsav will be celebrated. Well, right now it's time to say goodbye until Monday, when we come back with the daily India report and of course our daily news updates as well. Well, it's been wonderful having your company, and until Monday, it's goodbye from us.